We are progressing well, and I think, as you may appreciate, KRA no longer takes manual returns. All the returns are submitted electronically, online. Our taxpayers are filing returns from the comfort of their homes or the comfort of their offices. So we believe that as it is currently, we have sufficient internet connectivity in the country. And recently, you remember, the president even launched additional connectivity for far-flung areas which are not covered by the current networks, so that every Kenyan who needs to transact online is enabled to do that. So the taxpayers are filing, and remember, the filing period is 6 months, because we start filing from the 1st of January all the way to 30th of June. So the filing is going on. There is no disruption in filing. We of course know that a few businesses have been affected by the COVID, but that is basically in terms of their operations. And the impact then will not be in the filing. Probably the impact should be in the payment of the taxes. We file returns first and foremost as a way of determining our liability to tax. So every taxpayer at the end of a period is supposed to provide a statement which indicates the liability that has accrued in terms of taxation for that period. For the income taxes, for example, they have to determine their profits for the period on which tax is levied. For VAT, they also need to determine the value added within the month by comparing the purchases of the month against the sales of the month, and the markup for that period, the total markup for that period, is then levied to tax. So basically, returns are required for purposes of establishing the tax liability of a person in a tax period. We would only tamper with the deadlines if our clients, the taxpayers, face significant challenges in filing. However, as it were, we have noticed the need for us to scale up support at this point in supporting taxpayers in filing their returns. So, as you may have heard, we have shifted our support from initially having face-to-face contacts to providing online support. We have a 24-hour call center which can provide 24-hour support to any taxpayer that requires to be supported in filing. But we have also opened up other channels of communication with the taxpayers, including Skype and Zoom, so that this can enable us then discuss specific challenges that some taxpayers are facing, and also discussing the same with the representative institutions of taxpayers. Because you remember, taxpayers are grouped, they have various associations and other representative organizations. So we are using these new additional methods of correspondence and communication to improve our outreach and explain our position and support to the taxpayers. This has only not been a concern to KRA. This has also been a concern to the President of the Republic. Remember, recently he gave directives that as a way of cushioning the taxpayers from the adverse effects of the slowed down economic activity caused by COVID, a total of 10 billion shillings more has been set aside to pay outstanding refund claims. And That money is about to be released, but the most critical, most important thing on our part is that we have actually processed refunds to the tune of about 10.5 billion that we are ready to pay as soon as the funds are availed. And in various fora, you have had the CS National Treasury saying that this money has been set aside. It has been put in the supplementary budget, and as soon as it is approved, it will be available for refund.
Right.
So this is something that we take very seriously, and we will be paying immediately the funds are available. If you're filing taxes, usually by virtue of your return, you will notice that you have overpayments. Now, when you have overpaid taxes, you are then allowed to seek a refund for the overpaid taxes. And for VAT, this mainly accrues to persons that are engaged in exportation or zero-rated supplies. For income tax, it means persons that have basically estimated and paid more taxes than they ought to have paid. And for that reason, they have an opportunity to apply, because refund process is based on application. So they apply to the commissioner for consideration of a refund of the amounts that are that have been overpaid. Now, in the event that application is approved, there are actually two avenues in which the overpayment can be utilized. The first part is that you can use the overpayment to settle any outstanding liability, because at the time you are being refunded, you could have also made other returns which indicate that you have amounts to pay, you have taxes to pay. So we can allow for an offset so that you don't have to pay that tax, and the balance is then given back to you by check, so you receive actual cash. With the support of other government institutions, on our own, we are studying the impact of COVID on business. And for example, we have identified specific sectors that are hardest hit. For example, the hardest hit sectors are hospitality and transport. As you may be aware, you are aware that flights have been grounded. There are no international flights taking place now except for cargo. You also notice that the restaurants, the hotels, and similar hospitality industry sectors have been impacted negatively. So what we do normally for our taxpayers, because they are our clients, is anybody who has had a very significant hit, negative impact arising from COVID, should be able to reach out to KRA and demonstrate to the authority the challenge they are facing with evidence, and we will be able to put them into an arrangement that will allow them meet their obligations with much more ease. Because our objective number one is to ensure that businesses continue, and that the payment of taxes, the arrangement for payment of taxes does not bring them down. Number two is, as usual, if at any one time we issue an assessment, which is a liability to tax, and it turns out that the person paying the taxes does not have a supportive cash flow, we have also been giving them an opportunity, if they come forward ahead of time, to enter into a payment arrangement which is fairly comfortable to them. So this has always been available to taxpayers, and I'm sure outside there they will tell you that yes, a few times when they run into cash flow problems, they are able to get support from KRA on payment of taxes. The requirement for one to get a PIN is provided for under the law, and other than for purposes of persons who have registered to pay taxes, there are other reasons why people acquire PINs. For example, opening a bank account, being able to access other government services, you require a PIN. But those other services are not tax related. So yes, it is true that there are people who came forward and obtained PINs, but at the same time, because of the facilities they were using to register, they chose wrong obligations and imposed on themselves obligations to pay certain taxes. Now, when you choose a tax obligation, that obligation requires you to file a return as required. If it's a monthly tax, you file a monthly return. If it's an annual tax, you file an annual return. Now, anybody who has an obligation, who has a PIN and has an obligation, will still have to continue filing a return, because failure to file a return will attract a penalty. However, in the event that a person made a mistake in the process and chose a tax obligation that he ought not to have chosen in the first place, there is an avenue for them to apply to the commissioner for that obligation to be removed. And if it is so approved, with evidence, of course, if he submits evidence and it is so approved, what will happen is the penalties and interest that would have wrongfully accrued will also have to be removed. There would be no reason for anybody not to file a return. Remember, filing of a return is a statement of your liability. So what it means is that if you have not earned an income in this period, you still file a return, but you tell us exactly what you earned. So if you earned 0, you tell us you earned 0. So you file a return depending on, on the basis of what you have earned or what has accrued as tax in that period. So the filing of returns is a process issue. It's not a payment issue, because payment and filing are two different things. So we expect everybody to file their returns on time. The systems and the facilities for filing returns, including assistance provided for KRA, exists. Payment for taxes also, the systems are available because the banks are open. Online payment is provided for. Maybe if you are not aware, we also now have filing of returns using mobile phones, especially for TOT and presumptive taxes, and you can still pay them online. So the payment arrangement is there. So we don't expect really a big problem in the filing of returns. So we will work very hard to ensure that all Kenyans file their returns and do not suffer the penalties associated with late filing. But anyway, it is given that anyone who files a return past the due date will have to bear a penalty for it. It is an obligation for us, first of all, to pay our taxes, because this is how we contribute to national development. And at a time like this one, when we have a pandemic and the government has even a bigger demand for funds to support the interventions against the pandemic, it is our obligation as Kenyans to contribute. The way Kenyans contribute to supporting this kind of problems, supporting the interventions of government, is basically by, first and foremost, by paying taxes. In addition to what they are doing now by contributing to funds set up by government. So first, we pay our taxes. Number two is that we would like to tell them that as an authority, as KRA, we have put in place all mechanisms for them to meet their tax obligations and pay their taxes, file returns and pay their taxes.